trouble in your house. It is that nothing extraordinary is born overnight. The spotlight might appear suddenly, the applause might erupt in an instant, but what people celebrate publicly was built privately. What they admire openly was forged quietly. And if you're in a season where it feels like nothing is moving, nothing is shifting, nothing is happening for you, I need you to understand something. Something is happening in you. Celebration doesn't announce itself. It doesn't post updates. It doesn't post updates. It doesn't send notifications. It doesn't send notifications. Works in silence. You may feel hidden right now. You may feel like your efforts are unnoticed, like your discipline is unappreciated, like your commitment is unrewarded. But hidden seasons are not wasted seasons. They are foundational seasons. Their foundation is weak. The building won't stand when pressure hits. You don't build skyscrapers on shallow ground. Before elevation, there is excavation. That means something has to be dug out. Pride has to be removed. Fear has to be confronted. Doubt has to be challenged. Old habits have to be challenged. Old habits have to be uprooted. And digging isn't glamorous. Digging is dirty. Digging is uncomfortable. Digging feels like you're going down when you want to go up. But you don't go up safely until you've gone down deeply. Some of you are frustrated because you feel buried, but you're not buried, you're planted. There's a difference. When you're buried, it's over. When you're planted, it's just the beginning. Seeds don't panic in the soil. People, because it's dark, they do their work underground. They stretch, they break open, they grow roots before they ever show fruit. Roots first, fruit later. Everything feels dark right now. Maybe it's because your roots are expanding. Maybe your character is strengthening. Maybe your character is strengthening. Maybe your discipline is sharpening. Maybe your patience is being stretched so your capacity can expand. The most trouble in your house, it is because what's coming will require more of you than who you used to be. Preparation is protection. Let that sink in. If you were elevated before you were ready, you would crumble under the weight. If you were promoted before you were disciplined, you would sabotage the opportunity. If you were given influence before you built integrity, you would lose both. So the delay you're complaining about might be the shield that's guarding you. There's a quote that says, when the time is right, the result will appear. But here's the part most people miss. The time becomes right when you become ready. Readiness attracts opportunity. Pain, success, success. Ask yourself, are you preparing for what you've been praying for, what you've been praying for? The most trouble in your house, it's easy to ask for greatness. It's harder to train for it. It's easy to desire impact. It's harder to discipline your habits daily. It's easy to dream about the stage. It's harder to master the silence. The unseen work is the real work. When nobody is clapping, are you still committed? When nobody is watching, are you still consistent? When nobody is praising you, are you still consistent? When nobody is praising you, are you still pushing yourself? That's preparation. The most trouble in your house, it is every moment you chose growth over confidence. That's preparation. And preparation builds confidence. The kind that doesn't need validation. Be the kind that walks into rooms without shrinking. The kind that stands firm when pressure rises because it knows the work has been done. Confidence without preparation is noise. Confidence with preparation is power. Some of you want the crown, but you're resisting the training. You want the victory, but you're avoiding the conditioning. Champions aren't made in the arena. They're being made in practice, in repetition, in discipline, in commitment. When it's inconvenient, you don't rise to the level of your dreams. You fall to the level of your preparation. So if it feels slow, good. If it feels repetitive, good. If it feels quiet, good. Growth loves routine. Strength loves resistance. Depth loves time. Stop measuring progress only by visible results. Measure it by internal change. Are you thinking differently, responding differently, handling pressure differently, handling pressure differently? That's progress. Preparation is shaping your mindset. It's teaching you patience. And it's the B. It's teaching you focus. It's teaching you to trust the process instead of chasing applause. Because when the moment finally arrives, and it will, you won't need to scramble. You won't need to fake it. You won't need to panic. You won't need to fake it. You won't need to panic. And readiness turns opportunity into destiny. So don't rush this season. Don't resent it. Embrace it. Lean into it, building it, strengthening it, refining it. The hidden years produce public impact. And one day people will call you lucky. They'll say you appeared out of nowhere. They'll think it happened fast, but you'll know the truth. That pain has a voice. It whispers when you try to sleep. It echoes when you sit alone. It reminds you of what was lost, what was broken, what didn't go the way you planned. And most people spend their lives trying to silence that voice. They run from it, they numb it, they distract themselves from it. But what if the very thing you're trying to escape is the thing that's shaping you? Comfort feels good, but it rarely changes you. Pressure does, struggle does, loss does. There's something about hitting a wall that forces you to discover strength you didn't carry. Now you had. When everything is easy, you don't grow. You coast, and coasting never builds character. Think about it. The moments that defined you weren't the easy ones. They were the hard conversations, the closed doors, the nights you cried and still had to wake up the next morning and function like everything was fine. Those moments carved something into you. They sharpened your awareness. They strengthened your endurance. They strengthened your endurance. This is a tough one, but an honest one. When you were betrayed, it hurt, but it also opened your eyes. It taught you discernment. It taught you not everyone who smiles with you stands with you. When you failed, it embarrassed you, but it also humbled you. It showed you where we're weak. It showed you where you were weak. It showed you where you needed discipline. When you lost something you thought you couldn't live without, it crushed you, but you're still here. That loss didn't end you. It revealed you that there's a difference between being hurt and being defeated. Hurt is an emotion. Defeat is a decision. You can feel pain without surrendering your future. The truth is, pain strips away illusions. It removes the mask. It forces you to confront yourself in your house. You find out what you really believe when everything falls apart. You find out who you really are when there's nothing left to hide behind. It's easy to have faith when everything is working. It's easy to be positive. In most trouble in your house, it is when doors are opening. But who are you when the phone doesn't ring, when the opportunity doesn't come, when the relationship ends, when the diagnosis arrives, when the plan collapses? That's where power is built. There's a quote that says, "Smooth seas never made a skilled sailor." And it's true. Calm waters don't teach you how to steer through storms. You learn balance in the shaking. You learn courage in the chaos. You learn resilience when you have no other option but to stand up one more time. Pain forces growth, and growth is uncomfortable when a muscle is stretched beyond its comfort zone. It tears just a little. And when it heals, it grows back stronger. The same is true for your spirit. The stretching season feels like it's breaking you, but it's actually building you. The tearing feels unbearable, but healing is happening beneath the surface. Some of you are in that stretch right now. You're tired. You're questioning. You're wondering why the pressure hasn't let up. But pressure reveals capacity. You don't know how strong you are until strength is required. The critical part. Pain will either make you bitter or better. The same fire that hardens clay also purifies gold. The difference isn't the fire, it's the material. You can let pain poison your heart. You can let it close you off, make you cynical, make you cold, or you can let it refine y'all. You can let it teach you compassion, teach you empathy, teach you wisdom. Because when you walk through darkness, you recognize it in others. When you survive storms, you know how to guide someone else through theirs. Your scars become proof. Not proof that you were broken, proof that you're healed. And healing is powerful. Don't be ashamed of what hurt you. Don't hide the chapters that nearly took you out. That's where your authority comes from. That's where your voice gains weight. Anybody can talk about strength when life is easy. But when you speak after surviving something that tried to destroy you, people listen differently. Pain gave you depth. The most trouble in your house. It slowed you down long enough to reflect it. It made you value what truly matters. It removed what was superficial. It clarified what was essential. And maybe, just maybe, the reason you went through it wasn't to break you, but to prepare you for someone else's breakthrough. The power you carry now didn't come from comfort. It came from endurance. It came from getting knocked down and choosing to stand again. It came from crying and still believe it. It came from doubting and still moving. So don't resent the pain. Redeem it. Redeem it. Let it fuel you. Let Let it sharpen you. Let it remind you of what you survived. In your house, it is uh, closed doors have a way of shaking you. You walk up to something you were certain, wow, decision, a relationship, and opportunity, and it shuts in a relationship and opportunity, and it shuts in your face. No warning, no explanation, just silence. And that silence can feel loud. It can feel personal. It is the it can feel like rejection stamped across your forehead, but not every closed door is rejection. Sometimes it's protection, sometimes it's redirection, and sometimes it's a quiet whisper telling you you've outgrown this space. We get attached to what we prayed for. We get attached to what we pictured. We get attached to what feels familiar. And when it doesn't work out, we assume we failed. But what if it didn't work out because it couldn't hold the weight of who you're becoming? You can't fit a bigger future into a smaller room. Some doors close because the environment behind them would shrink you. Some relationships end because they were built for a previous version of you. Some opportunities fall apart because they were stepping stones, not destinations. But when you're standing in front of a closed door, none of that feels comforting. It feels like loss, embarrassment. It feels like embarrassment. It feels like you weren't chosen. Let me tell you something powerful. Sometimes not being chosen is the greatest blessing you will ever receive. Because when you're chosen for something too small, you settle. When you're accepted into something beneath your potential, you stay comfortable. And comfort can be the quiet killer of greatness. Rejection has a way of refining your direction. You applied, you prepared, you showed up, and it still didn't happen. That hurts. I won't pretend it doesn't. Pain doesn't always mean you were denied. It might mean you were redirected. You were heading one way and life shifted you another. Most trouble in your house, it is not to punish you, to position you. Think about how many times you've looked back and realized that what didn't happen was actually a gift. That job you didn't get led you to a better one. That relationship that ended saved you from years of misalignment. The opportunity that collapsed forced you to build something stronger. At the time, it felt like loss. Later, it felt like clarity. The challenge is trusting that clarity will come before you see it. Closed doors test your confidence. They make you question your value. They make you wonder if you're enough. But your worth is not determined by access. Your value is not measured by who opens the door for you. Sometimes the door closes because you were never meant to walk through it. You were meant to build your own. When the building your own door requires courage, it requires you to stop waiting for validation and start creating opportunity. It requires you to believe that your vision doesn't need universal approval. It requires you to trust that if one path shuts down, another is being carved out, even if in your house. You can't see it yet. Redirection often feels like disruption. You had a plan, a timeline, an expectation. And when that plan collapses, it feels like chaos. But disruption can be divine strategy. It forces you to reevaluate. It forces you to pivot. It forces you to grow beyond the boundaries you placed on yourself. Sometimes you pray for expansion, but you want it to happen inside the same old structure. Expansion doesn't work like that. Growth demands space. And if the current room is too small, the door has to close. You may have outgrown spaces that once fit you perfectly. That's not arrogance. That's evolution. You're not the same person you were a year ago. Your mindset has shifted. Your standards have risen. Your awareness has deepened. What once felt aligned may now feel limiting. That's growth. So people don't always understand. They might think you failed. They might think you lost. Let them think what they want. You know what's happening inside you. You know the hunger that's building. You know the vision that won't let you settle. Close doors. Build resilience. They teach you to knock with confidence and to walk away with dignity. They teach you that your path isn't dependent on a single opportunity. They teach you that one no doesn't cancel your destiny. Rejection is not a verdict. It's feedback, it's direction. It's refinement. And sometimes it's preparation for something that requires a stronger version of you. Don't beg for doors that were meant to stay closed. Don't shrink yourself. Don't shrink yourself to fit into rooms you've outgrown. Hey, don't question your calling because someone else didn't recognize it. If it's meant for you, it won't require you to lose yourself to keep it. Trust the rerouting, trust the pause, but trust the discomfort of transition, because every closed door is clearing the hallway for the right one to open. There comes a season when you can't see clearly, not because you're blind, not because you're lost, but because you're blind through fog. And fog is uncomfortable. Fog blurs the details. It hides the distance. It makes the future feel uncertain. You can't see 5 miles ahead. Sometimes you can barely see 5 steps ahead. And that's where faith becomes real. This is to move when everything is visible, when the path is straight, when the signs are clear, when the outcome feels guaranteed. But anyone can walk when they see the whole staircase. It takes something deeper to take the next step when you only see the edge of it. Faith doesn't mean you have all the answers. It means you trust enough to move without them. Some of you are frustrated because you want clarity before commitment. You want confirmation before courage. You want the full blueprint before you start building. But growth doesn't work that way. Most of the time, you get instructions one step at a time. Fog forces focus. When you're driving through thick fog, you don't speed up. You slow down. You lean in. You pay attention. They grip the wheel a little tighter. You become intentional about every movement. And that's what this season is doing to you. It's sharpening your awareness. It's teaching you patience. It's training you to listen more closely. Because sometimes clarity isn't missing. It's forming. Clarity isn't missing. It's forming. The problem is we want guarantees. We want certainty. We want to know that if we step out, everything will work perfectly. But that's not faith. That's control. And control feels safe until life reminds you that you never had it to begin with. Walking in faith means releasing the illusion that you need to see everything to trust something. There's a quote that says, leap and the net will appear. But that leap feels terrifying when you don't know what's below you. It feels reckless. It feels risky. It feels uncertain. And yet some of the greatest breakthroughs in your life came after a leap you were scared to take. Think about the times you stepped forward without knowing how it would work out. The move you made, the decision you committed to, the conversation you initiated. You didn't have all the answers. You had conviction, and conviction carried you further than certainty ever could. Fog doesn't mean the road disappeared. It just means you can't see the entire stretch yet. And that's okay. You're not meant to carry the weight of a whole journey at once. You're meant to handle today, this step, this choice, this act of obedience. The future will reveal itself in layers. But you have to trust enough to move. The faith grows in uncertainty. If everything was predictable, you wouldn't need it. If everything was guaranteed, you wouldn't develop it. The tension you feel right now, the questions, the wondering, the stretching, that's stretching your trust muscle. And trust is powerful. Trust allows you to sleep at night even when you don't have all the answers. Trust allows you to keep working even when results are delayed. Trust allows you to remain steady when circumstances shift, because faith isn't loud. It's steady. It doesn't panic in the storm. It doesn't collapse under confusion. It doesn't demand immediate explanation. It says, I may not see it all, but I'm still moving. Some of you are waiting for the fog to clear before you move. Some of you are waiting for the fog to clear before you move. But what if the fog clears as you move? What if the clarity comes after the step, not before it? What if the breakthrough is waiting on your willingness to trust? You don't need a spotlight to walk forward. You need courage. Courage doesn't eliminate fear. Courage doesn't eliminate fear. It moves anyway. And let me tell something, the fact that you're still here, still believing, still trying, even in uncertainty, proves there's something inside you that refuses to quit. That's faith. It may be quiet, it may be fragile at times, but it's there. Strength isn't always loud confidence. Sometimes it's quiet endurance. When the path feels unclear, anchor yourself in what you know. You know your values. You know your purpose. It is to be, the growth you've experienced. You know the doors that close for a reason. You know the pain that produced power. Hold on to that evidence when the future feels blurry. Hey, didn't ignore reality. It looks beyond it, and one day you'll look back at this foggy season and realize it taught you more than any clear day ever could. It slowed you down enough to listen. It humbled you enough to trust. It strengthened you enough to continue. Keep walking. There's something powerful about doing the right thing when nobody is watching, not when the lights are on you, not when the applause is loud, not when recognition is guaranteed. I'm talking about the quiet decisions, the small choices, the moments where you could cut the corner, bend the rule, lower the standard, and you don't. That's obedience. And obedience in the small things builds strength for the big things. We live in a world that celebrates the highlight reel, the promotion, the platform, the pub. Lights win. But what you see on the stage was shaped long before anyone clapped. Character isn't built in front of crowds. It's built in private consistency. It's built when you wake up early and discipline your mind. It's built when you choose integrity over convenience. It's built when you stay committed, even though no one blames you for quitting. That's where real power grows. A lot of people want greater responsibility, but they resist small instructions. They want influence, but they ignore discipline. They want elevation, but they don't want accountability. It doesn't work that way. The small is the test. The unseen is the proving ground. If you can't handle the little, you won't sustain the large. Obedience is not about perfection, about alignment. It's about choosing what's right over what's easy. It's about following through even when your feelings shift, because feelings are temporary, but principles are steady. You won't always feel motivated. You won't always feel inspired. The most trouble in your house, it is about you won't always feel confident, but obedience doesn't wait for feelings. It moves on conviction, and conviction is forged in private. There's a quote that says, "How you do anything is how you do everything." That means the way you treat small tasks reflects how you'll treat major opportunities. If you're careless in the details, you'll be careless in the spotlight. If you're disciplined in obscurity, you'll be disciplined in visibility. The small moments prepare you for the defining moments. Think about the athlete who trains when nobody is in the stadium, the hours of repetition, the sweat, the sacrifice. Nobody cheers for that part. But when game day arrives, that hidden work shows up, that preparation speaks. Life works the same way. Every time you choose patience when you could react, every time you choose honesty when you could deceive, every time you choose to stay committed when quitting feels easier, you're building something inside yourself that no one can take away. Obedience strengthens your integrity, and integrity gives you stability, and integrity gives you stability. When pressure comes, and it will, integrity keeps you from collapsing. It anchors you, it reminds you who you are and what you stand for. Some of you are waiting for a bigger sign before you act. You're waiting for a louder confirmation, but often the next step is already clear. It's just small, it's just simple, and because it's simple, you underestimate it, but don't underestimate simple obedience. Send the email, make the call, study the material, show up on time. Keep your word. Apologize when you're raw. Forgive even when it's hard. Those actions may seem ordinary, but they shape extraordinary outcomes over time. Consistency compounds. You don't see the results immediately. That's what makes it's the buzz difficult. You plant today, but you harvest later. And in the space between planting and harvesting, you must trust that your obedience is not wasted. Discipline in your house. It is the but. Discipline creates freedom. When you master yourself, you're no longer controlled by impulse. You're no longer swayed by every opinion. You're no longer driven by short-term comfort. You move with purpose. You act with intention. And intention builds legacy. The world might overlook your quiet faithfulness. People might not recognize your commitment. They might not see the nights you stayed focused, the times you resisted temptation, the effort you put into growth. Because what you consistently obey shapes who you consistently become. You don't rise suddenly into greatness. You grow into it through repeated alignment, through daily discipline. through small acts done with excellence. And here's the truth, big opportunities often look for small obedience. When you prove trustworthy with little, you're entrusted with more. Hey, when you demonstrate discipline in hidden places, you're prepared for visible impact. Stay faithful where you are. Don't rush past the lesson. Don't ignore the instruction. Don't compromise your standards for temporary gain. You're being built, not just for success, but for sustainability. It is the tie. And sustainability requires integrity. So when it feels small, do it anyway. When it feels unnoticed, do it anyway. When it feels repetitive, do it anyway. There's a moment in every journey where you hit a wall, not a small obstacle, not a minor inconvenience. I'm in trouble in your house. It is I'm talking about the kind of moment that knocks the wind out of you, the kind that makes you sit down in silence and question everything, the kind where you say, I don't know if I can keep going. That breaking point feels like the end. It feels like weakness. It feels like failure. It feels like everything you built is collapsing right in front of you. You try to hold it together. You try to stay strong. You try to act like it doesn't affect you. But deep down, you feel cracked. And here's what most people don't realize. The breaking point is often the turning point, is often the turning point. It is, you see, as long as you think you can control everything, you don't grow beyond yourself. As long as you believe your own strength is enough, you don't tap into deeper strength. Wow. In your house. It is sometimes you have to reach the edge of your ability to discover capacity you didn't know existed. Breaking strips away illusion. It removes the mask. It humbles your ego. The principle on your house. It exposes the areas where you were relying on comfort instead of conviction. And that exposure is painful. Nobody enjoys realizing they're not as strong as they thought. Nobody enjoys admitting that. Idiots today, idiot, tired, confused, overwhelmed. But humility opens doors that pride keeps shut. There's a quote that says, rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. And that's the truth. The most trouble in your house, it is when you hit bottom, there's nowhere else to fall. The only direction left is up. The only option left is growth. Some of you are ashamed of your breaking point. You think it disqualifies you. You think it proves you weren't built for greatness. Trouble in your house. It is but what if it proves the opposite? What if the pressure was so intense because the calling on your life is heavy? What if the resistance showed up because the impact you're meant to make is significant? Pressure reveals structure. The most trouble in your house, it is the pressure. It wasn't reinforced properly. And sometimes life allows a collapse so you can rebuild stronger. You thought you were being destroyed, but you were being reconstructed. The breaking moment forces you to reassess your priorities. It forces you to examine your motives. It forces you to confront your fears. It pushes you to dig deeper than surface level confidence. It asks you, who are you when everything comfortable is gone? That's where transformation happens. Don't discover your strength in ease. You discover it in endurance, when you wanted to quit but didn't, when you felt like giving up but stood up again, when you cried but still chose to believe. That strength builds a quiet confidence, not loud, not arrogant, just steady. You begin to understand that you can handle more than you thought. You begin to trust your resilience. You begin to walk differently because you've seen yourself survive. Rankin also clarifies. It shows you what truly matters. It strips away distractions. It reveals who stands with you and who was only around for convenience. It sharpens your focus. It deepens your gratitude. It strengthens your discernment. You start choosing differently after you've been broken by. You guard your peace more intentionally. You value your time more carefully. You speak with more wisdom. You move with more purpose because pain matured you. The version of you before the breaking was strong in theory. The version of you after the breaking is strong in reality. Tested, proven. Replying, sometimes you had to lose what you thought you needed to discover what you actually required. Sometimes you had to fail publicly to build privately. Sometimes you had to face disappointment so your expectations could be elevated. The breaking point is not your burial. It's why. The breakthrough disguises defeat. Then when you look back one day, you won't see it as the moment you fell apart. You'll see it as the moment you were forced to grow beyond your limits. The moment you stopped pretending, the moment you got serious, the moment you decided that pain would not define you. Don't curse the break and use it. Let it refine your mindset. Let it strengthen your discipline. Let it anchor your faith. Let it remind you that you are more resilient than your worst day. Some of you are walking around carrying a quiet weight called disqualification. You don't say it out loud, but you feel it. You replay the mistakes. You revisit the failures. You remember the times you fell short, the times you said the wrong thing, chose the wrong path, trusted the wrong person, and somewhere along the way a voice started whispering, you had your chance. You blew it. Let me tell you something clearly. Mistakes do not cancel destiny. Failure is an event. It is not an identity. You messed up. Welcome to being human. You fell short. So has every person who has ever done anything meaningful. You made a decision you regret. Good. That means you've grown enough to recognize it. Growth requires grace. The problem is we live in a world that magnifies errors and minimizes evolution. People will remember your lowest moment as if that's your permanent address. Other than your house, it is the but you be not your worst day. You are not your most embarrassing chapter. You are not the sum of your missteps. You are a work in progress. There's a difference between guilt and condemnation. Guilt says, I did something wrong. The condemnation says, I am something wrong. One pushes you to improve. The other tries to paralyze you. And too many of you are paralyzed by something that was meant to propel you. The most trouble in your house, it is a bit. Your past may explain you, but it does not define you. No one would lead. No one would build. No one would build. No one would rise. Every champion has losses. Every leader has regrets. It is every strong person has scars. The question isn't whether you fell. The question is, did you learn? But because when you learn, you level up. There's a quote that says, failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of it. Let that sink in. The very thing you're ashamed of might be the lesson that prepares you for what's next. The embarrassment might be refining your humility. The setback might be sharpening your discipline. The detour might be strengthening your discernment. Disqualified, you're being developed. Some of you are holding on to shame like it's humility. You think beating yourself up proves you care, but growth doesn't come from self-destruction. It comes from responsibility. In your house, it comes from owning what happened, correcting what you can, and moving forward with wisdom. But grace doesn't excuse your actions. It empowers your transformation. You can acknowledge your mistakes without living in them. You can admit your failures without surrendering your future. You can learn from the past without being chained to it. The enemy of progress is not imperfection, it's stagnation. If you stay stuck replaying old chapters, you'll miss the opportunity to write new ones. So if you keep defining yourself by who you were, you'll never fully step into who you are becoming. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to grow beyond old habits. You are allowed to outgrow old mindsets. You are allowed to outgrow old mindsets. You are allowed to become wiser than your former self. That's not hypocrisy. That's maturity. And here's something powerful. The areas where you failed often become the areas where you are strongest later. The place where you lack discipline becomes the place you build structure. The place where you trusted blindly becomes the place you develop discernment. The place where you were insecure becomes the place you build confidence. Your weakness becomes your training ground. Don't let anyone convince you that one chapter defines the whole story. Stories have twists, they have tension, they have setbacks, but they also have redemption. They have resilience, they have growth. You are not finished, they have growth. Trouble in your house, it is the breathing. There is room to rebuild. There is room to correct course. There is room to rise again. Falling doesn't mean you're out of the race. It means you stumbled, and stumbling is part of movement. You can't stumble standing still. The very fact that you fell proves you were trying. And trying means you're alive. It means you care. It means you were bold enough to step forward. So stop shrinking because of old enough to step forward. So stop shrinking because of old mistakes. Stop silencing your voice because of past failures. Stop disqualifying yourself from opportunities because you think you're unworthy. The worthiness isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. Stand back up. not arrogantly, not pretending nothing happened, but stronger, wiser, more grounded, more focused, more disciplined. There is something powerful about understanding that this is not the end of your story, not this chapter, not this struggle, not this waiting season. It may feel long, it may feel exhausting, it may feel like you've been climbing without seeing the top. But what's ahead of you is not emptiness, it's fulfillment. The promise of what's next requires a version of you being built right now. You can't step into tomorrow carrying yesterday's mindset. You can't walk into elevation thinking small. You can't handle greater responsibility with undeveloped discipline. That's why this process has been stretching you. That's why the preparation was necessary. That's why the preparation was necessary. That's why the preparation was necessary. That's why the pain refined you. That's why the closed doors redirected you. That's why the fog forced you to walk by faith. That's why obedience strengthened your character. That's why the breaking point became your turning point. That's why the breaking point became your turning point. That's why you were reminded you are not disqualified. All of it is connected. Nothing you went through was random. There's a quote that says, every next level of your life will demand a different version of you. Let that settle in your spirit. The level you're praying for requires growth. The impact you're asking for requires growth. The impact you're asking for requires maturity. The blessing you're waiting on requires capacity. And capacity is built in the waiting. You've been thinking the delay meant denial, but delay is development. It's a quiet construction site where your resilience is reinforced. It's where your patience deepens. It's where your perspective shifts. It's where your perspective shifts. It's where you learn to value the process instead of rushing the outcome. Because if you rush the outcome without honoring the process, you won't sustain what you receive. What's next to you isn't small. That's why it hasn't been easy. That's why it required pruning. That's why certain people had to exit. That's why certain opportunities had to fall apart. That's why certain habits had to break. You're being aligned. Alignment doesn't always feel comfortable. It requires adjustment. It requires surrender. It requires letting go. What you thought it would look like so you can embrace what it actually is. And what it actually is bigger. Bigger than your fear. Bigger than your doubt. Bigger than your doubt. Bigger than your past. But here's the truth. You have to believe it before you see it. The expectation shifts your posture. When you expect something greater, you prepare differently. You speak differently. You move differently. You guard your energy differently. You stop entertaining distractions that don't align with where you're going. Because you know something is coming, not in arrogance, not in entitlement, but in quiet confidence, the kind that says, I've been through too much preparation for there not to be purpose. The pressure you survived wasn't wasted. The lessons you learned weren't accidental. The tears you cried weren't unseen. They were deposits, and deposits always lead to a return. But here's the key. Don't wait for what's next to start acting like it's possible. Live now with the discipline of someone who expects growth. Speak now with the confidence of someone who trusts the promise. Act now with the focus of someone who understands that every day is building momentum. Momentum doesn't explode. It builds small steps, daily consistency. The most trouble in your house. It is about the intentional choices. That's how what's next becomes what's now. Some of you are closer than you think, closer to clarity, closer to opportunity, closer to opportunity, closer to opportunity. A breakthrough. The darkest hour feels heavy because dawn is near. The tension feels strong because transition is happening. Transition is uncomfortable because it stretches you between where you were and where you're going. But you are not stuck. You are in motion. Even when it feels slow, you're progressive. Even when it feels quiet, something is shifted. Even when it feels uncertain, growth is happening beneath the surface. Trust that. Trust that your preparation has positioned you. Trust that your pain has strengthened you. Trust that your obedience has aligned you. Trust that your breaking has matured you. Trust that your breaking has matured you. Trust that your growth has qualified you. The promise of what's next is not just about external success. It's about internal elevation. It's about becoming someone who can carry impact without losing integrity. someone who can handle influence without losing humility, someone who can walk into new rooms without forgetting the lessons learned in the old ones. There. That's real success, and it's coming. But you have to stand firm. You have to stay focused. You have to refuse to shrink back into comfort just because growth feels heavy. You've come too far to doubt now. Lift your head, square your shoulders, fix your mindset. What's ahead is greater than what's behind. See, if you believe your next chapter will be stronger than your last, type next level and step into it with bold faith.